Sikonathi Mantshantsha, I thank you for your time. Let's begin. We're here. Is what's going on at Eskom a grand conspiracy from what we're hearing from unions like COSATU who say that they think that the executive is sabotaging the president's plan? The executive think that the employees at Eskom are sabotaging the president's plan. So is there a big conspiracy or is this just down to incompetence? Why are we load shedding?
If you have to make allegations, then you have to bring the evidence. If this is conspiracy, please do provide the evidence, and indeed you can help with the police. You can help the police get to the bottom of that matter. What I do know is that Eskom has admitted itself that its power stations are breaking down. It does not have enough coal at its power stations. And Eskom, as you do know, is running short of money. That is what's crippling its operations. So if there's any allegations about conspiracy, I have not seen any evidence. If you have, I would be quite happy to look at it as well.
Mantshantsha, the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, was deputy president in 2015 and was chair of the War Room Committee that was supposed to look for long-term sustainable solutions to Eskom. Fast forward some 4 years, here we are. We're sitting with the same old problem of lack of power, capability within Eskom, and an ongoing bailout plan. Why is Cyril Ramaphosa still the man to see through what he couldn't do in 2015?
What you don't know is that the so-called war room was just an attempt by Jacob Zuma and his government to pretend there was something happening to try to fix what was wrong, not only with Eskom, but with the post office, with South African Airways, with all the companies owned by the state. The truth of the matter is that that war room had absolutely no legal standing at any of the organizations. Eskom had its board and its management. SAA was the same situation, SAPC and everybody. The war room was just a marketing ploy to pull wool over our eyes. What you also don't know is that that war room was closed down 2 months after the fact, after the announcement. So other than the fact that it was a useless group of individuals chosen by Jacob Zuma to pretend there was work, the real people pulling the strings was the Minister of Public Enterprises, Lynn Brown, who was not accountable to the war room, and the board of Eskom was not accountable to the war room. The management of Eskom was not accountable to the war room. The management of Eskom was accountable to the board, and the board was accountable to the minister, who was indeed accountable to the president. The war room was just a side issue that was totally useless and had no real standing. It did not do any work. Now, 2 months after its existence was announced, a formal board resolution at Eskom closed it down. So there was no war room.
Sikonathi Mantshantsha, part of the problem is that the president seems to be actively doing a bit too much. He's leading the investment drive. He's leading the job summit. He is also very hands-on when it comes to Eskom. The only logical question is, if he's going to succeed amongst the myriads of problems that the South African economy is facing, surely he must delegate. Where is David Mabuza, the deputy president?
I am here to talk about Eskom and indeed what's going on with the energy situation. But let me just engage you a bit. The Minister of Public Enterprise is delegated by the President to deal with these matters. There is a board at Eskom which also is accountable and has a fiduciary duty to work to Eskom. So I'm not interested in where David Mabuza is or whether Cyril Ramaphosa has got too much in his hands. There is a Minister of Public Enterprises accountable for this particular problem.
Ultimately, Eskom does not have money, as you clearly put at the beginning of this interview. It does not even have enough money to pay for the loans that it's already made. So what's the solution facing the Minister of Finance next week? It can't just be another blank check bailout. There needs to be some sort of accountability to make sure we rein that in. Do you believe that Treasury should take some of the bulk of the loan that Eskom is sitting with? As Jabu Mabuza says, some 100 billion rands. Do you think it's a good idea?
That train has really left the station already. Cyril Ramaphosa said last week that the Minister of Finance will provide assistance, funding to Eskom in the budget. Do I think it should be done? At this point, it's too late to be asking that question. The question that we should be asking is, what would be the best possible way for the government to assist Eskom without endangering the rest of the economy? And there aren't many options there.
Ultimately, Sikonathi Mantshantsha, Eskom has serious operational, structural, and serious financial liabilities to deal with. But as these load shedding patterns keep coming up into the contemporary issues, do you think that the management is more obsessed with short-term measures to address what's going on, or can we actually put some money on getting a long-term sustainable solution to this?
The sustainable solution Cyril Ramaphosa has already proposed in his speech in Parliament last week, and that is to break up Eskom into 3 separate companies. That's just the starting point. Of course, the next level would be to get proper governance for each and all of those units. Secondly, you then have to capitalize them properly, which you will do by by taking off some of that debt that Eskom has been asking for 100 billion rand to reduce its 420 billion rand pile of debt. So if the government comes through and does that, and then separates the company into a generation, distribution, and transmission company, you then can bring in investors in either of the 3 or in all of the 3 to take stakes. How big a stake is a different matter altogether. But what you do need is to introduce a certain level of discipline. You need to produce certain kinds of performances that will allow investors to be able to earn a return on their investment, and indeed for the company to be to wash its face, really. That is the long-term solution. At the present point in time, though, what you do need to have is get all the power stations fixed and working and delivering at full capacity. That is a short-term measure, and it needs to be done now. Hence, the Public Enterprises Minister was talking about the company possibly going bankrupt if you don't do those things.
Sikonathi Mantshantsha, I need 30 seconds of your time. Ultimately, if Eskom fails, it undercuts the president's message to attract investment into the economy and also to grow the stagnant economy. Do you think that he must take us into his confidence, the president that is, and readjust his expectations and ours?
Whatever the president does and says, ultimately there is no economy without Eskom in South Africa as it is at the moment. And that the solution there cannot be wished into existence. A lot of hard work and painful decisions need to be taken now. So there's not much of confidence in which Cyril Ramaphosa can take us. He just has to stand up and say, we will give Eskom X amount of money, and we will allow Eskom these emergency measures to procure coal and make sure the coal gets to the power stations where it is needed immediately. We will commandeer the best engineers in the country. This company is 95 years old. There are people who built it. They are still around. Eskom needs to bring them in and allow them to fix the organization. There's no rocket science about it. You just need to get down and do the job, but you also need money, and it has to be done now.
Sikonathi Mantshantsha, I thank you for your time. As always, unfettered views. That was the deputy editor of the Financial Mail, Mr. Sikonathi Mantshantsha. We will call on him again, I'm sure. After the break, at what premium are investors looking to hold Eskom's debt? We discuss Eskom's rolling blackouts and bailouts. More when we return.